Here's an idea. Different pieces of media have differing responsibilities for being accurate. Spoiler alert, the dinos in Jurassic World do not have feathers. In space, no one can hear you explode, and no matter how elite you are, hacking the mainframe doesn't look like a bag of Skittles mated with a word processor on mushrooms. Often a movie or TV show will cause many people, and almost certainly Neil deGrasse Tyson, to exclaim, no, that is not how that fictional thing would actually happen. This is important because even fiction unavoidably references our world and portrays other worlds which on some level claim to be true, or at the very least consistent. And stuff that's wrong, especially stuff that doesn't need to be wrong, in service of that consistency can really stick in your craw. Importantly, the things taken the most to task for their inaccurate portrayals of science, technology, or history are the ones that are usually the most widely viewed. For example, since the first Jurassic Park, paleontology has progressed and revised much of what we thought to be true about dinosaurs. Chief amongst those dino discoveries, they were probably feathered.
So it's possible that the most famous and feared dinosaur might have been sort of fluffy.
So why did Jurassic World, part of a franchise which is famously the pop culture source for knowledge on dinos, fail on feathers? There is some in-movie meta dialogue explaining that audiences don't want realistic, they want scary. Maybe they thought feathers weren't fearsome enough. I don't know, I find ostriches terrifying, and they are basically just feather dusters with legs and a beak. But I don't know, maybe that's just me. My guess is that it has something to do with focus groups, sure, or that one guy in the writer's room who has never played The Witcher or stared eye to eye with a falcon who kept being like, dudes, no way, feathered stuff just isn't scary, but also significantly with brand recognition, with that consistency. In films, when things explode, even in space, they go boom. When it is awesome and appropriate, and sometimes when it is neither, a car will drive between the wheels of a semi. Regardless of what is factually natural in the actual world, these tropes are natural in the world of cinema. This is why we go to the movies, not this. This, not this. This, not this. The assumption is that there's no time or place for accuracy in a non-stop, big-budget thrill ride. And in certain situations, sure, I really don't need goatee McWolf muscles to spend more than 6 words explaining how his boots work.
Up is hard, down is easy.
And if every stunt in Furious 7 has to be literally possible, that means there's no driving the Lycan supercar between the Etihad Towers in Abu Dhabi twice. Bam. I mean, crash. But I think there are some movies, or even some parts of some movies, from which we can reasonably expect facticity as opposed to coherence, real reality versus internal consistency. Is Jurassic World one of those movies? For me, no, but for many other people, yes. Same with countless sci-fi and space films, which miss the mark portraying what it's like floating around a tin can far above the moon. I get all bent out of shape over movies like The Imitation Game, which invented or misrepresented all kinds of stuff about Alan Turing. You could argue that this also applies to film adaptations of comics, which many people see as having a responsibility to reconstruct or teach wider audiences about the complex sequential art universes they love. And that, I think, is a big part of it. Responsibility. Beyond being irritated that movies misdepict something you are well familiar with, frequently frustration mounts because the things being misrepresented don't already enjoy wide appreciation. Astrophysics, paleontology, forensics, computer science, the actual lives of real people portrayed in a piece of popular culture provide an opportunity to set the record straight and let people know what's really up. Mozart and Salieri were pals. But I mean, how great a story is the mostly invented feud between 2 amazing composers in the Vienna of old. A story about 2 composers who are just sort of friendly rivals wouldn't be as much fun. And this, I think, is the mostly invented trade-off. What is actually true, and perhaps slightly educational, versus what's more entertaining. How do creators choose? Playwright and theorist Bertolt Brecht thought that theater, at least, can and should be used to educate, that artistic experience and education go hand in hand, but Brecht also always wanted audiences to know they were watching a construct so they could react critically. If you willingly suspend all disbelief, you become immersed and are no longer in the theater, in your body, having critical reactions and thinking about the work and its place in the world. This makes me wonder, though, how much actual willing suspension of of disbelief really exists anymore. Lots of modern audiences grasp that media is made by people with aims, biases, and backgrounds using technology designed to create believable simulations, but frequently this understanding is used to diminish the impact of media, not appreciate it. There might be wide recognition of media artifice, but we have a while to go before critical consideration is commonplace. Also, we don't tend to accept that the cinema and media in general is already teaching us things. Every piece of media teaches us how its creators think the world can, should, or does work, and teaches us the conventions of its own creation. Every book, TV show, movie, or video game teaches us how books, TV shows, movies, and video games work. To claim that there is a strict binary between education and entertainment on the side of the audience is to deny that media educates us about these things, which it does, while it is also entertaining us, which it does. Unless you're watching a Pauly Shore movie. Pauly Shore joke. Maybe the dichotomy is between accuracy and creative freedom on the creator side then. If focused on accuracy, then creators can't follow their beautiful and unique snowflake creator hearts and forget about all this responsibility nonsense. Besides, I don't watch CSI to learn about forensics, I watch it to... Hey, why do people watch CSI?
That's what happens when worlds collide.
David Ehrlich for Slate writes that judging films based on their accuracy misses the point completely. Facts and truth are two very different things, he writes, and suggests that it is not only possible, but perhaps cinema's imperative to accomplish truth without facts. He was writing about based on true events movies like Selma and Foxcatcher, but I think the extrapolated conclusion is that the means are justified by the ending, where two inaccurately portrayed giant lizards fight to the death and we all get super hyped about dinos. So if that is the point of JP, and it fudges details in order to do it, so be it. But even if we don't want to learn, even if we consciously know that what we're watching is a fiction, that doesn't stop us from absorbing some of it as fact. You might not watch CSI to learn about forensics, but as it turns out, you might think you're learning anyway. The CSI effect describes, quote, the impact that viewing fictional criminal investigation shows like CSI has upon jurors' real-life decision-making processes. Tamara F. Lawson at the Loyola University Chicago Law Journal writes that the entire criminal litigation process is potentially influenced by the fear that the CSI effect has created a population of CSI-infected jurors that respond to the criminal case and its evidence in different and unexpected ways. So maybe that responsibility, if it does actually exist, is different for different pieces of media. If we're all sorta wrong about dinosaurs, maybe that's okay, but if the public perception of the justice system is affected, maybe that's a bigger deal. Of course, there's also the question of whether or not CSI is responsible for the recent rapid rise in actual forensic scientists, who I'm assuming, went to like actual school as opposed to just watched CSI.
I'm gonna get to the truth.
What do you guys think? Do movies and TV shows have some degree of responsibility to be accurate? Let us know in the comments. And if you like our aims, biases, and backgrounds, please subscribe. Is nothing sacred? The answer is no. Let's see what you guys had to say about remakes. Dashry on the subreddit connects all of the remakes being made to the idea of political and artistic progression, and I think that this is a really smart and interesting way of looking at this, and that you can see all of these movies that are being made as a symptom of culture and media sort of being stuck. But I think that this also relates to something that Brian Knudsen wrote in his comment. That's you can also view it as a symptom of another kind of progression that sort of the distribution of technology that allows people to make movies and the ability for studios to remake things with greater production value, better graphics, etc., etc. So yeah, I think these are sort of ideas in tension with one another that are both really good. CT Cassian also on the subreddit talks about how Freud is begging to be referenced here, and this idea that I was not familiar with, that when you take something away from a child, they might be sad, but then when you show it to them again, they become excited, and that this maybe plays into the glut of remakes that have come out, and this, aligns with the Baudrillardian look at things, which is the sort of infantilization of the masses by media. So, I mean, hey, yeah, sure, why not? Our desires for remakes are artificial. Wesley Whiteside points out that even though remakes might not be a new thing, that there is maybe a new attitude about them, and that you could say that remakes of the past were about bringing previous or older properties to a new audience, whereas now it is about bringing the same thing back over and over and over again to the same audience. And I think this is a really interesting distinction, and I'm going to think about it for a little while, but I'd be really curious to know what you all think about this sort of dichotomy. Alejandro Chavez talks about how plays are constantly remade and yet nobody complains, and Joseph Leblatt talks about this very thing, right? That this is part of our understanding of plays as a piece of culture, that they're sort of like a score for a symphony, that they are a thing that is remade, whereas we tend not to think of movies that way. At least it's not a given in the media itself. But yeah, this is a great point. Sarah Fogg, Digibro, and a bunch of other people talked about the possibility that remakes are experiencing such a moment because of our taste for modern-seeming media, that there is a lack of desire to go back and view older media for all kinds of reasons, one of them being that it just doesn't look as good. And so it feels almost like maybe a responsibility to update these things so that they are natural looking or seem normal to a modern audience. And I think this is an interesting idea. And finally, the feminist baker points out that maybe, like many other things, the baby boomers are to blame for this problem, that the number of remakes is a symptom of the fact that there's a generation of people who have sort of risen in the ranks from fan to, some production capacity, and they are using their influence and power to remake the things from their past. Yeah, maybe. I mean, any excuse to blame the baby boomers for something. Mom and Dad! This week's episode was brought to you by the hard work of these fine feathered dinos. We have a Facebook, an IRC, and a subreddit links in the doobly-doo. And the tweet of the week this week is not a tweet of the week so much as a cool thing that I found via Twitter. Waywords and Mean Signs is a project to record the entirety of Finnegan's Wake set to music. It is exactly what you are imagining it to be, but also better than that. Check it out.